friends, I'm Maxwell Freud, a queer Minneapolis-based board game designer and the host of Hatch This Way, a limited audio series where I chat with other queer folks in the tabletop industry to learn all about who they are and how they contribute to the hobby by being their authentic selves. And today I'm chatting with Maggie, Megan, and Chris from We're Playing Games. Y'all, how you doing?
Wow. Even better now that I've been so eloquently introduced.
Your whole name right there. So my first question, the point of the podcast is talk to me about how y'all identify, maybe just so people get used to it. Say your name again so they get voice name thing and then talk about how you identify.
Hi, I'm Maggie here. You will confuse me with my fiance, Megan. We both have brown hair and M names. I identify as queer or gay, or sometimes a lesbian, depending on how I feel that day. And, you know, I am engaged to a person who identifies as a woman. So in that way, I only see women.
So true. Hi, I'm the fiance. I'm Megan.
And that's her name. No, take it back. No names.
I'm Megan. I use she, her pronouns. I also identify as a queer woman. I also sometimes use terms like bi and pan to describe myself, but queer is a great umbrella term. It feels very fluid to me.
We love umbrellas. We hate the rain.
So I think that is how I identify myself.
I like you. That's how you think. You know, there's always self-discovery along the way.
I don't know, right? It's like I could be fooling myself.
Look, I like being open. I'm Chris. He, him pronouns. I keep it easy. Gay man. Although obviously, you know, if someone is queer is obviously a useful identifier as well. I just don't say that about myself all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I've been realizing like I mostly hang out with queer people, so I don't really talk about how I identify. We just kind of like, oh, queer. Like it's not that important to me. It's important to me that you're queer. It's not important where you fall on the spectrum necessarily. So I've actually gotten to talk to some friends and just learn more about them because we never really had some of those conversations because it's just like, oh, you're family. Like that's really the only box you needed to check for me to be best friends with you. So everything else is whatever.
Right. I was just sitting here and I was thinking, I'm not sure the last time I have told Chris, for example, that like maybe I might be pan. Who knows? So hey, Chris, is that cool with you?
Is it cool with me? Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. It's always good to check in with your friends.
I introduced myself on a Zoom call the other day as, you know, moving in a she-they direction, which is nonsense. I think we can all agree now that we're in a safe space.
Talk to me about, let's see, where do we want to start? Let's start with how y'all met each other. Let's go there, and then I'll work into the more personal stuff.
So now you'll hear why I'm the first name listed. I'm the crux that holds this family together. Megan and I met in high school, believe it or not. We are now engaged. And we've been dating for 9.5-ish years. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. You can hear more about that in my stand-up. And Chris and I met in college. We were in dueling comedy groups and became best buds, and then Megan,
I was also around. I went to school very close to where Maggie and Chris went. And it was a very small school in a very small town, and they went to a big state school. So
we went to IU, Indiana University, go Hoosiers.
Their social life was much more exciting than mine. So like on weekends, pretty much almost all weekends at some point, I would come in and visit them, and they let me into their little life. Chris, I would say, let me into his little life. Maggie was stuck with me.
Well, I let you into my grand life.
Megan and I joke about how we don't quite remember how we met. Well, I say we, but it's mostly me. I don't really remember how we met. I was just like, oh yeah, we're friends now.
Guys, I do remember how you met, and it's related to this podcast.
I guess that's true.
The first time Chris and Megan met, I brought Megan to move into my apartment in Bloomington, where we went to college. It was my summer between Chris and I's freshman and sophomore year of college. And Chris picked us up and we went to a friend's house and we played Small World.
That's true.
Small World was probably Megan's first ever hobby play.
It was. I hated it. I hated it so much.
But I love Small World. That is majorly my gateway. Small World and Takanoko, which are both Chris introductions. Chris introduced us to the hobby for sure.
Yeah, I corrupted this house.
Absolutely.
I think Takano was a good time. Small World is definitely more of a digital game to me. Like, love digital Small World. In-person Small World, I don't know. I think I set it up one time and we said no. Like, not me. I'm down for anything, but my friends were like, what? How? What? Yeah,
look, I would love to sit here and say that like it was just because it was the first time I played it, and like now that I love board games, I love Small World, but I don't. Like, I still hate playing it. So that's me.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
I love it.
Talk to me a little bit, if you want to go like round robin or whatever, about your journey to becoming your authentic self. And I think for a lot of us, that's like a continuing journey, but just get me to how we got here.
Yeah, I can start there.
Megan is her authentic self, so she's ready to start.
I fully transcended to the person I'm supposed to be. No, that's a lie. We're always all growing. But yeah, I think
Megan, this is a visual medium. This is an audio medium, so you can't see this, but Megan's hat, she's wearing a hat that's slightly off to the side, and she's like, I'm my authentic self. Boo, boo, boo. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that, so as Maggie mentioned, she and I started dating in high school. And I think that there was I'll put us on blast here a little bit. There was like I think it was like a long journey before we were like out in a larger sense.
Or a smaller sense.
I think it was like a slow process of us like slowly coming out to important high school friends and then our families. But again, another huge reason why I visited Maggie and Chris at IU so much is again because the community that I went to, the school that I went to, was very, very small and very, very straight. And being queer there felt very visible. And going to IU on the weekends to a larger school, in a more supportive community where I was not the only queer person around, was really, really fundamental, I think, in me learning about my own identity and me kind of like testing and trying things out and me feeling like I was a part of a supportive queer community and what that even meant. Going to Pride for the first time was all kind of wrapped up in visiting them. And so I think that was a huge growing, during those college years, was a huge growing process in me learning about that authentic self, but not always in the space that I was also living. And that was complicated to navigate. There was definitely, I think, something that happens a lot, and for a lot of queer folks, is that separation of self between who you are in straight spaces and who you are in queer spaces. And it was, again, I think a long time before those two really merged into one that I was happy with and proud of.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I was along for part of the journey with Megan in high school. I'll put us on even deeper blast and say that I think both of us at one point or another identified as straight except you, babe. Which is so deeply horrifying.
I wasn't gonna go there.
Well, and then I entered college, and I think like so many queer people before me, college sort of opens your mind. I came from a liberal household. I was not worried. I'm very lucky to have not been worried about what my family or my brother would think of me. And I also was just like such a tomboy. I was such a tomboy growing up that I think the biggest inner battle for me was like, but then I'm going to prove all those jerks right. And so I had to sort of get over that clearly internalized homophobia, to just sort of chill out and be okay with wearing backwards hats in public again. And once that happened, I, got engaged, and then now everyone knows. So there's sort of no going back.
Can't hide it.
We're
now.
sort of like, well, if Handmaid's Tale happens, we're f***ed now. Sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this pod, so I'll say if Handmaid's Tale happens, we're in a bad situation now.
That'll be the soundbite you pull out from.
That'll be good.
I think also in college I was part of a comedy group that became very much like a chosen family that was very welcoming, and I had Chris and other best friends at the time. And so we were just sort of like all gay and holding hands all the time. And that makes it a lot easier, I think. And it's nice when that happens. And it takes the like pressure off your identity. And instead your identity gets to be like a fun and exciting thing you explore every day. And it sort of is fluid and non-binding. I think as a young person, I felt pressure to have binding identities that would be unchanging. And I think as I've gotten older, I have given myself more slack in exploring what different things can be. And that has led to me being, I think, the most authentic version of me, because I'm, very finicky. I'm just like very picky and choosy, and for that reason I don't like to commit to ideas that I'm not 100% on. Your turn, Chris. That'll be my closing. Those are my closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. If it may please the court.
Please.
This
Gavel,
courtroom.
gavel.
Thank you. Please, rowdy down. I had a very similar, I think, I hate to say standard experience in a lot of ways. For me, it was a lot of if I don't exist, no one will notice, which is an overarching theme in other parts of my life in a way. But I remember like in high school, I was like, if I just don't even think about it to myself, no one will notice or ask questions and I won't have to participate. Like I was like, even after I got to like college and I was like out to some friends in a very like soft way, as in like, I'm not straight, or it's like how it began. And even like after like a year of being in that space, it was still like not totally comfortable even talking about like other people's identities or other people's attractions of like how'd your date go. Like, because the moment I would become interested, I'd be afraid then like the tables would turn. Then it's like, I don't have a real answer and I don't want to expose anything. And then it like kind of, you internalize a lot of that. Then it's like, you don't, even though it's like, I knew I never like fully accepted that for myself. So like, I never felt like I was like holding back so much. I never felt like I was crushed beneath like, oh, I can't be who I am. But like, I was. In hindsight, you're like, oh no, it wasn't great. Could have been a lot better a lot sooner. And I the thing that comes to my mind is, I hate to say that it took this, but it kind of eventually just took like, you got to go out and kiss a couple boys and then like in front of other people, and then everyone can go, we get it, we know, we've known for a while here.
And I was there. I was the one saying, Chris, we get it, can we please go home?
And then once that,
this is a Wendy's.
It honestly was. It's like, if I saw it now, it's so embarrassing, but also it's almost like a teen drama moment of like this 19-year-old in a basement with like a mural painted on the wall and like
he's describing a real scene.
This is a real scene. This. Just a little too drunk and like everyone's
as
on
if
the dance
it's something
floor.
we all we all experience.
We all remember this,
making out in front of that basement mural.
In front of that basement mural, but then like the floor cleared. It was like just me until Maggie was like, you gotta go home.
So good, you guys. No one knew, and I swear someone, when it started to happen, cheered and ran around the party saying, do you see Chris? Do you see Chris? Making out. And then everyone gave him his space to make out with this other person. And then we had to be like, we have to go home, buddy. Home. Do you remember home? It's where we sleep.
It was great. So yeah, unfortunately it did take, in a sense, like it took a while to feel like safe and comfortable and like to get approval from other people before I was like fully okay being myself and talking and expressing myself. But I think that was like the first Band-Aid being ripped, and then after that it was just like there's just a lot of joy also in just being vulnerable in a way and just like sharing cool stuff about you. I know this is like so vague, but there's something very fun about also hanging around and being friends with queer people because everyone's experience is just slightly different and just like kaleidoscopic, that it's like fun just to be like, wait, so what happened to you when you were 17? And everyone has like a slightly different, weird, freaky story. And it continues to be weird and bizarre and fun, even in later adulthood. So now it's kind of shifted to like, there's a lot of just fun with it, which obviously I know it's like not everyone's experience and everyone's like in a lot of different spaces. So I'm very grateful that I can be in that, place of comfort.
Yeah. And to briefly add on to that, yeah, Chris, as you were talking, it was reminding me that even as I was sitting here and telling this story about how I thought that I was the only queer person on my campus, and I was involved in Greek life. And so like that is obviously also complicated in its own way. But again, I like had it in my mind that it was like, I was so isolated. And I remember I like officially came out during my like senior year in a very nonchalant way. And after I did, several people reached out to me also like sharing their own experience.
Megan is a queer icon on her college campus. A trailblazer.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think that there were a lot of thoughts that I had at the time that were like, oh, if I had just done this sooner, like I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. And all these other people also thought that they were alone. And I think that's a very, not standard, but I'm not unique in that experience. But it was such a thing of like, if I could look back to my 18-year-old self and tell myself that it like, wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was, because everyone knew that I was secretly dating someone in IU anyway, because no one leaves to go to IU every weekend unless they're unless they're in a relationship. But also just like,
but there's really good Indian food, so that's another reason to come to IU.
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I wish that I hadn't held out as long as I did, which is, I think, is a feeling that a lot of people have after coming out.
Megan and I think, are in the unique position that our identities for so long have been very linked to each other. So that, in a good way, gave us someone to rely on and have a buddy throughout this process. But also, I think it held us back at times. We didn't know how to identify without the other person. We were very sort of committed and monogamous in a way that didn't allow us to explore other things, and also sort of gave us the easy out of, instead of coming out and learning about your own identity, we could just say, well, I'm dating Megan. Mm-hmm. And that's like a hard thing to say, and it is a way of coming out, but it's a whole lot easier than saying the scarier sentence, I'm gay, to someone. For sure. So I think that in that way we were both early and late bloomers.
I think
we're like still baby queers, even though we have now been out for so long.
I haven't asked this of anyone yet, but did you have a moment where you knew that you were queer?
Oh my gosh. Just last year, I uncovered a memory in my brain once I came out.
Coming out for me too.
No, I've told you guys that I came out to my mom in a Staples at 8, at like 7 or 8, and then immediately sobbed and blocked the memory. I still don't know if my mom remembers. I'm sure she does. I'm sure she's like, my daughter did a weird thing today that I hope doesn't come up for another 20 years.
I think many people have maybe not so stark of a moment that you did, of just like realizing over time how many moments you had with yourself that you protected your own brain from, like how many crushes that you had that you're like, that was very obvious, but even a year or 2 years out, I was still like, no, I don't know. I don't think I did. So yeah, I don't think there's a moment, but other than like in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, I had many crushes growing up all the time. But I don't know if there's a moment. I think it's probably like when I was like 17 or 18, kind of one of those, like you stand in front of the mirror and you're like, I'm gay. Wait, no. Okay. And then like it's like doing Bloody Mary at midnight. If you say I'm gay 4 times, eventually, I don't know, you'll
Do you
see
hear that,
yourself in a new
kids?
light.
Do you hear that, parents? You better cover up those mirrors
Yeah, that's I think
if you don't want your kids to end up like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I often say, and it's very true, that like I didn't in the same breath that I told Maggie that I had feelings for her, I was admitting those things to myself. Like it was so walled off that until I said the words out loud, I like if you had asked me literally 2 minutes ahead of time, I would have been like, no. And so I think that it was like this very surreal, as Maggie was just mentioning, that, you know, our coming out process was so linked. Me admitting to myself that I was gay was the same time that I admitted to myself that I had feelings for another woman, and I was also admitting that to her.
It was real messy, you guys. This is not the pod to hear our whole origin, but what I can say is that we stared at each other for hours at a time and then would be like, okay, that's just friend stuff. Let's go to school.
Yeah. I know. I think as someone who also experiences attraction to people that identify as men, I think that for a long time, I just kind of was like, oh, that's like good enough. And just like never even, it's not even that I like didn't like question or really like dig into the feelings I was having for women. It just was like off my radar because I was having attraction to men and I was like, that seems fine to me. And
I just sort of thought, like when I pictured my life in the future, I didn't really think about romance. Like I was like a gay person in the 40s. I would just be like, I'm just going to live with my friends in New York City forever. and just like let myself go on like that would be a reality that would be cool and fine. And it would be, I think. But I just, you know, would watch Grease. No, I didn't like John Travolta. And that would be the end of the thinking. I wouldn't say, who's this girl in leather pants? I would just say, you know, we have together like blah, blah, blah.
Was it Grease? Was it Grease that did it to us? Because I also watched Grease. Grease 2.
Man, look, I love Grease. I
think we can do a round table of important pieces of media that affected us.
I think it was Grease 2 and Maxwell Caulfield for me, like that.
Okay,
Ooh.
Yours is Grease 2. Chris, give it to him.
Oh, I think mine is probably going to be 13th Year, the Disney Channel original movie about a boy who becomes a merman. Because it turns out when you have a movie about a boy who thinks cute and he's on the swim team and also he's magic. Hello. Also, like, you know, any monster movie or monster story is the easiest pathway to being like a queer metaphor. So of course there's this boy his body's going through changes and he doesn't want anyone to notice. So I guess it stuck with me.
For Megan, it was Casper.
Well, that's complicated. I mean, look, Casper the Friendly Ghost was so nice. And I just like wanted this like soft, nice boy when I was 8, which is also, I think, queer in its own way. But I also had a huge poster of Ashley Tisdale above my bed and like Katy Perry from like the California Girls tour and like a little
whipped
bikini.
cream coming out of her boobs.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I really appreciate these two artists.
Their art.
Actually.
I think it was very that for me. I was very much like, I just think they're wonderful actresses.
So you had like you admired them like you were a woman of a certain age. Admiring like a Broadway star.
It's sort of Chris admiring women, the same women I admired then, but now.
That's like true. An intellectual way.
Oh God. Just because I think this would be fun. Can we talk about how you feel about stereotypes and like are ones that ring true with you, ones that need to go away? I didn't have this planned very much, but
yeah.
I think people should wear more vests. Specifically gay women and non-binary people. I think we should bring back the tuxedo vest over t-shirts.
Oh God. If you just said vest, I'm like, well, come to the Midwest. Like that's
no. I mean tuxedo vests over t-shirts with jeans as like nice outfits. I would like that. It would make my closet better if we did that now.
Yeah, this is reminding me of also a funny story from college, where sorority girls at the time where we were in college, we're all the like standard darty outfit, that's day party for any uncool people in the audience, was like a flannel shirt, denim shorts, and Birkenstocks, which these were all things that I owned because I was a queer woman. So I was like, great, awesome. And so I'm like, I fit right in. This is totally cool. And there was one time that I was at one of these parties and I was meeting a girl that I had never met before. And we were standing and like I had maybe had a few beverages. And we're standing in this group of people, and all of a sudden she looks at me and says the words that I think every queer person has feared. I know what you are. And I was like, what? And she was like, it's okay. I know that you're gay. She was like, Birkenstocks, flannel shirt. I know. And I'm like, everyone else is wearing this too. Like, what have I done wrong? And she's like, no, it's okay. I'm gay too. Like, we can talk about it. And I was like so overwhelmed that I just was like, I have to call my mom.
First of all, what a leader.
And then I called Maggie and said, I was like, I just had to get away from a situation because a girl came up to me and said, I know what you are. Again, full Twilight.
Oh,
I know what you are. And I
say it out loud. You're gay.
I thought that I was passing. And I didn't, to this day, I don't really know what I did wrong to tip everyone off, that I was just like a little bit off of what everyone else had decided was straight.
I think that a stereotype that is maybe true is that as kids, queer people had funny, weird interests like rocks. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I really liked getting rocks and collecting them, making them shiny, doing stuff like that. That is
Having a
pretty.
project.
That's pretty gay, I have to say.
My version of that was being in the basement by myself with a karaoke machine, hosting a talk show and like a late night show, and then I would also use a typewriter and just copy books for the tactile enjoyment of it all. So I don't know what that has to do about my identity so much as my neuroses.
I think that it's fun to talk about stereotypes that ring true because it's camp basically now. But stereotypes that are bad are bad.
Yeah,
and it must be said.
I'm like, stereotypes can be like a form of like in-humor. If you're in the group and like we can poke fun, mostly because a lot of times they come from an outsider's POV anyways. Like, this is what an outside group thinks of us. Wouldn't it be funny if it was true? LOL. Let's embody it as like a little rebellion or whatever. Like, let's run down the street and be flamboyant or whatever. And it's like fun.
In this house, we're big proponents of the metrosexual. We think it should come back.
Oh, yeah, great.
That's also a stereotype. That's a stereotype that could be brought up.
And of course, obviously, the flip side is like when the stereotypes are used by out groups, then it's becoming like we were just talking about. Like, there's this weird, predictable resurgence of this idea of queer people as like dangerous, as predators, as like sneaky weirdos, and it's like obviously that's horrible and no good comes of it. But also like it's such an old, tried thing. But I think like when you're like in a group of safe people, there's like is some space to play with. Kind of like Maggie said, it almost becomes camp. So I guess that's where I lie. Like, you can dig down in the end of the day and be like, we know where these come from, and like a lot of these ideas at their core are bad, but also I hate to say like almost everything in our modern world, if you dig down, it's horrible. So I guess we have to do some things to make our lives a little bit easier in this burning, dying planet.
Take your seedless grapes where you can, you know? I think it also helps that I don't know that our viewers, whatever, I don't know that the public or the board game community necessarily knows this, but we are three who live together. So, and especially through this pandemic, we trust each other, the three of us, so much, so inherently. We're such a family. We eat all our meals together and stuff, that I think we can end up having a lot of fun even with things that are bad. Like, if one of us was called a slur outside our home, we would make it upstairs, and before we sat down, the rest of us would be joking about it with them to make them feel better. So I think that all three of us are very lucky, but I'll speak for myself. I feel very lucky to have such complete trust that not only will they make a joke to make me feel better, but that those jokes will be coming from the right place. And so, yeah, they can make fun of my rocks, but no one else can. Those are mine.
Yeah, just because you brought it up, can you talk about in-group and like what that means? Because some people are like, in-group, what is in-group?
For sure. Chris, do you want to take it away as the man who opened the door?
Sure, I can try.
The prosecution.
I think kind of like how I said earlier, when you're with a group of people who aren't straight, you have such unique experiences, yet there's a connection between them all. Like there's a shared through line of experiences in a lot of ways, or similarities. And we can, as people who, have grown up and experienced similar things, you can kind of like make jokes about those things or relate to each other in a way that people who haven't had those experiences can't. I mean, you can have, if you're a straight person listening, you can have a best friend who's a lesbian woman, but at the end of the day, you'll never fully experience. I can never know the experience of that person. But if you're another queer person, you can connect in some way. So when you're with those people, there's like a safety that you can feel. But then when other people who aren't a part of that try to get in on it, sometimes you're like, you don't quite fit in. You kind of know it when you feel it.
I think a really easy way to say that is that you're allowed to like make fun of your little brother, but if someone outside of your family did, you would be upset. It's the same thing. I'm allowed to say that what made me gay is looking at rocks as a kid. But if like a dad of a kid who was looking at rocks said looking at rocks will make you gay, it would be hurtful. And so I think that is how I think of in-group and out-group. It's the same old, I'm a comedian, and it's the same like, don't punch down. You want to make sure that if you're going to make fun of something, you're making fun of large institutions and structures and not just individual people trying their best.
Yeah, like if we went to the zoo and overheard that dad telling his kid not to play with the rocks because it'll make him gay, the first thing we do is come home and start telling each other not to do things because they're going to be gay, because we want to make fun of that.
And also, I would go buy a bunch of rocks. I'd be like, how dare you? You don't need to punish your kid or the rocks.
But also, I'm gay, so
sorry. Don't do
Yes,
it.
it's true.
No, with any marginalized group, there's like just language that can only be used safely by that group, or they've reclaimed it. So I think a really obvious one is like Black people say the N-word. They can. Not everyone likes it necessarily. Some people are like, no, that's still a bad word. But white people cannot use that word. Like, I think people know that's not acceptable. So that's called in-group. I think there's a lot of, in the queer community, queer is also an in-group word. I had to explain that to my friend who it was like harmless. He used it in an email, I think, because he heard me say it. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I don't care if you use that around me, but just you shouldn't publicly say queer because you're not queer. And that's still a derogatory term for when it comes out of a straight person's mouth. I don't know your stance on it necessarily. So you can't say that. I was like, just don't say that.
Totally. And it's also, I think there similarly, there's like different feelings about it, even within the community.
And especially generationally.
I was just about to say, I once told someone who was in their, a gay man in his 70s, that I was queer. And his first reaction was like, whoa, that's like, you shouldn't say that. And then he was like, oh, I guess you can. It's just, it's strange for me. And so I think that that's also something as a young queer person I try to keep in mind is like me, that identity, like I said earlier, that umbrella term felt so safe to me because it was almost like a relief to, as Maggie was saying, to not have to like pigeonhole myself into one specific thing. But just because I feel that way, not every other person in the queer community feels that way too. And so I also, there's like in-group, I think even within the in-group sometime, and then it's complicated because it is complicated.
I really like queer as an umbrella term because I think it accomplishes so much of like our mission as queer people, which makes it sound like some big conspiracy. But I mean like it, I think that I truly believe that we have a responsibility as queer people to like queer the world as like a verb. And so for that reason, I like it as an umbrella identifier. And I also think that it gets to the heart of the idea that all these separate gender and minority identities are part of something bigger. And because of that, we're able to make bigger and better change. I also I believe that the older generations of queer people have had to and still do shoulder such a heavy burden that we as younger people will never understand. So I think that another thing that I think is our responsibility is taking care of them and making sure that they aren't at a baseline lonely and at a greater idea like at risk. Because I do some volunteering with an organization called SAGE here in New York. That is an organization for elderly queer populations, and so many queer people who are elderly are single without children, so they're just alone in the world now because of the AIDS epidemic, because it was illegal to get married, because fewer people got together with people and then stayed that way. And I think we have a great responsibility to ourselves, to the future generations, to take care of older generations, because they did everything for us and it's important. Okay. Buy some rocks and give it to an elderly gay next time you see them, please.
They will appreciate it.
Say it's from Maggie.
They'll know. They'll know.
Yeah, I think as a general rule, if you're straight and you're not sure if a word is in group or not, just don't say it.
Just don't say it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And also, so I had a coworker who, but he was watching. RuPaul was on Stephen Colbert, and RuPaul explained what Squirrel Friends was, and then he came to work, and he was like, started calling like me and my other coworkers Squirrel Friends, like, "Hey, Squirrel Friend," and like it was kind of endearing, but he kept doing it, and I was like,
yeah.
We're not like
We're not
you're
there.
married and straight, and I know you know what it means, and I don't know why you're saying it. Like it brings us closer together. It was very. I was like, this is just awkward. Like,
Yeah.
And in case people aren't aware, Squirrel Friends is RuPaul's term for people who like nuts, and so it works with traditionally gay men and hetero or people who like nuts. It works with anybody who enjoys some good nuts.
But this straight man that you worked with, you were like, you are not my squirrel.
No, I was like,
No.
you can't. No, on no level are we still friends. He's like, I like tree nuts. I'm like, that is not what we're talking about.
I feel like gay men's choruses and like lesbian bike groups are like,
How dare you?
He's not wrong.
Roller derby.
are like
Those are the stereotypes. Roller derby, yes.
They're like
This is what I wanted to get into with the stereotypes.
They're like staples of communities and like living history centers. Even though like we can make fun of like, oh, the gay men's chorus is coming in town, and you like can imagine what they're like. But
The gay men's chorus is coming to town.
Like in my mind, I can imagine any gay men's chorus in America. I see you in my mind. But also, yeah,
It's a
like
lot. It's a lot.
Like you said, there's so much just like lived history there. And like Maggie said, with like her volunteering work to talk to people who are around, or even just like, look, we're people who make content creators. We're on the internet often, but even when like a TikTok comes up of like an older queer person, we send it to each other. We're like, isn't this amazing? This person, we love
the old gays, the grinder old gays.
Are fun.
We genuinely do love them.
We just a couple days ago we're rewatching over and over this video of this woman just walking in her backyard saying, "The sun is shining. I'm a lesbian. I'm happy," and it made us happy.
And we're like, that's great.
I tweeted it.
Yeah, they're older. I mean, not to get too earnest here, but queer joy is already, I think, something that is so scarcely represented in media, and in a lot of things. It's getting better, but it's, I don't know if you
famously not great.
The Killing Eve finale. I didn't either, but I've heard that it's people were mad about that. I won't give any spoilers in case someone's still waiting to watch.
She dies.
But I think especially amongst like that only amplifies when we look towards older generations within the LGBT community, where like we don't see happy endings or queer joy or people that are of a certain age living authentically as themselves and being very happy about it. I think that's a very recent thing that we as a society have been exposed to. And so every time I see it, it reminds me that I will also be as happy and queer when I'm 75.
I hope so. I don't know. A fortune teller told Megan that we would get divorced at 40. So
that's true.
Who knows what could happen?
Well, speaking of spirit, you're going to get divorced and then get back together several times because that.
So true.
That's
that feels stereotype. Yeah.
I hope that.
Yeah, I think in terms of stereotypes, I also wanted U-hauling. As much as I would love to believe that that's not true, like Maggie and I admitted our love for each other and then immediately started like planning our future home together.
But it eventually led to a breakup. But then we got back together without really breaking up.
And then we moved in together. So
years later. No, we're very even keeled and thoughtful.
Yeah, in case people aren't aware, I think the stereotype that is
maybe the most famous
is that lesbians have tumultuous, very fast-moving relationships. Like it is.
Yeah. There's an HBO dating reality show called The 12 Dates of Christmas. I recommend the second season. There's a lesbian love interest, I think is what they call the like leads. And she's constantly saying like, I don't want anything toxic. I just don't want anything toxic. Our signs could be really toxic together. So I don't want that.
And
it was toxic. Then that person she was saying all that to kept sneaking down the hall into other people's rooms to make out. And so for that
it was fun.
It was very fun.
And gay.
And we want a gay bachelor. Thank you.
Well, we got one just.
Well, yeah.
Boo.
Yeah.
I'd like boo upon his name.
Talk about another bad stereotype. Him.
Why for every good queer or trans role model, there's like 3 who just shouldn't be public. Like Caitlyn Jenner is a prime example of someone who no one asked her to be as public as she is. Like I wish she just transitioned quietly and led a very quiet, happy life.
If Holland Taylor was twice as loud and Caitlyn Jenner was half as loud, I think the world would be a better place.
That's pretty good math.
I just saw she's on Fox and I'm like, of course she is.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It's like, it's a good place. Like maybe that will tank. I don't know. It'll do something. I don't know. That's enough. That's all the gay stuff I can handle. Let's
Me too.
keep talking about it, but transition into talk to me about what y'all do in the tabletop hobby industry. What's your jam?
Megan and I took a breath at the same time.
So I'll go first.
That's lesbian cinema, folks. Carol, watch it.
Gasping at the same time. So the 3 of us make board game content. We started off mostly on TikTok, but also do some stuff on Instagram, and we have fun with people on Twitter. Each of them, has their own little niche, but we mostly do like game overviews. We do like videos that we just come up with that we think are fun, like ranking board games based on like meeples and like just like the stuff that's fun to us. We joke that we make content for other people who are online all the time talking about board games, because sometimes we get like a little into our own belly buttons, but that's like fun to us. We kind of reached a point where we said we're only gonna like really focus our time on making videos that like we have fun doing and we're happy to put them out. We spent a while being like, what are people gonna want, and what are the numbers gonna tell me and all this stuff, and then we realized like we're making board game content, so it should be fun. Like we shouldn't take ourselves that seriously. So we have a lot of fun, and it's super beneficial, that we live with each other, and then it makes it fun and easy to do. We have each other to support each other to do it, and also I hate to say it, but I think we got good chemistry, and we like to like just have fun, all 3 of us together on camera, which we think sets us apart. And we we just have fun kind of just showing the goofy joy that can come in board gaming, because you know, so much, sorry, I'm talking so much about us, but you know, so much of board game stuff is like, you know, no shade to them, but you know, 45-minute long play-by-plays of board games, which is a lot of people clearly really like. It's just not kind of our style and not the kind of stuff we love watching. So we're like, there aren't enough videos of people saying which board games are the gayest, even if they don't have any gay characters in them. We're like, we are experts on two things, board games and ourselves. So let's put ourselves in the board games, you know?
Chris, I really like what you said, because even though you were just listing facts, it felt like compliments.
Yeah, I'm complimenting you, but it's really just a compliment about myself. So
I'll take it.
Self-brag.
We've also very recently started making videos with Our Family Plays Games for an offshoot of their YouTube channel called OFPG Voices, where they have brought in a variety of marginalized voices within the board gaming community to come in and just talk about, I think similarly to what we're doing here, just like talk about board gaming, but from perspectives and faces that we don't usually see in the hobby space. And that has also been a great, we have always, I think, wanted to find ways to incorporate our identities into the work that we do, not in a really in your face kind of way, but just like, we're never trying to be like board gamers who also happen to be queer. We're queer board gamers. A huge reason that we even started our channel was because of a post made by Raina of 1 Minute Board Game. Shout out Raina. She's wonderful. And about the time that her channel, her TikTok started gaining a lot of popularity, and we really loved it, and we're kind of thinking about also getting onto social media, she made a call out that was like, if you're a person who is not a white cis man in board gaming, like, you need to get on social media and get your voice out there, because we need you, and it's fun and it's necessary. And like, that was our push to start doing this.
I think being a, you know, platonic throuple in board gaming has allowed us to also be safe. There's safety in numbers, and I think we have had such a fun, happy time being a part of the board game collective community, because we've been very lucky to not receive very much hate and harassment, whether it be because we're all white or because there's, you know, a very tall man in our videos protecting me and Megan, or whatever, just the fact that there are three of us. But I think we've been really lucky in that regard. We are also goofy. I think our biggest brand is that we're very funny.
Which I don't know if you can tell from our very serious discussion, but we are goofy.
We contain multitude.
Listen, this is our big chance to convince everyone that we're academics too. We're always like, everyone, when they want smart board game people, they never come to us. They only come to us when they want goofy board game people. So this is our chance to be like, yes, well, readings tell us that.
That was smart.
That's also how I read.
That's how I take in rules too. Chris will be reading rule books word for word, and I'll be like, great, I see the icon. I think I can guess.
I love that. So I know Small World is a contentious title. What titles are like maybe collectively or personal favorites that, you know, people need to check out that you root? Okay, yeah.
We recently-ish blind rated all of our games. So like, we didn't know what each other were rating them as, and then we like put those ratings together to find out on average what are our favorite games. And it came out to kind of the same collection. We're looking
at, Megan and I are looking at the shelf right now.
While you look, I'll say the ones that I think I can remember.
Yeah.
We really like the Arkham Horror living card game.
Yes,
it's very good. As like a story.
That's another time where I think queer people are queering stories that we wouldn't otherwise find a place in. And that's part of why we love that game.
Yeah,
I've heard that come up a couple other times. I think in other like Discords or whatever, where people are like, "Oh, this Arkham Living card game is suddenly." I think because they're doing reprints now.
Yeah,
where they've been like notoriously hard to find, and now they're reprinting.
They are.
People are like, "Yes, this is our time."
I like Lovecraftian stories. We really liked Lovecraft Country on HBO. There are 2 books I really love that are Lovecraftian, but not by Lovecraft, who's a bad dude. And in the board game industry, that comes across in Eldritch Horror. There's Mansions of Madness. Those 2 games are designed by Nikki Valens, who's a queer person, a non-binary person in the industry. So I think those are such great examples of the sort of power of board games as a media source, because here's a type of story queer people of color are not usually in, and in board games we can not only see people like us in a game, but we actually can put ourselves into those stories and see how our life experiences would shift and change them. Sorry, Chris, keep going.
Let's see, we have Root, which it's animals, but very good. It's a game that when we first played it, we all yelled at each other and Megan cried, but then now it's our favorite game.
Yeah.
Just because like it's such a meticulously designed game that like every word in the rules matters. So if you forget one of the words, you forget like a key reading of a battle rule.
We really like to argue about rules in this house.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm from Minneapolis, so Leaders down the street. I know I've met Cole for sure. I haven't met Patrick
Megan's
yet.
crush.
I love Cole. Edit that out. I don't want Cole to know how obsessed with him.
But yeah, I need to play more. I've tried it a couple times, and every time I'm like, I'm not doing this right, and I don't know.
You gotta, once you crack through that barrier.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, oh god, I just need to sit down, and I have just so many games to play, though I haven't like got it. I'm hoping I need to download a digital version. I think that'll help me just like get
the Root digital version is good. It's really good.
Yeah,
the animation's cool.
I'm hopeful. I need to just figure it out and get through it. But also, my partner hates competitive games. So it's a tough one to get to the table. And we tried the cooperative version, and it was so hard. It was not close.
Oh, it's
did you try the mechanical marquee that's in the Riverfolk or the one that's in the Clockwork expansion?
We tried it with Riverfolk. It was before Clockwork came out.
That one's way harder. We couldn't beat it either.
Yeah.
They fixed the mechanical marquee for Clockwork, so it's significantly better, and we were able to beat it eventually.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's some insider Root knowledge. Chris and I famously got into a big argument once at the table over the definition of the word either in Cole's rulebook for Root about something, and we kept Googling it and being like, they don't know, nobody knows, no one's talking about this, let's post it on Twitter, let's start fights. And that's why we love Cole's games, Root games, Leader games, is because I feel like those rule books are so intricate and detailed that it allows you to really nitpick over words, which is just metagaming, honestly.
Let's see what ended up on our list. I have it pulled up. We also really love Obsession, which is a new game to us, but was a lot of fun. It's in Victorian England, and you're trying to like build up your estate so you can make a proper match between your children and the fancy kids down the road. So we play it as camp of like, it's so straight, it's gay now.
Yeah.
We have to keep bringing it back because like, it's so performative, but like performative heterosexuality that it's like fun to role play as a family who cares about this. Of like, we got to make sure our flower garden is good enough so that way the father comes over and approves of the drawing room and all that.
Oh, that's just my mom.
We love classics like Everdell and Wingspan.
We love animals in a game. If there's an animal in a game, we're gonna play it.
I think what's fun and interesting about TikTok is that the games that we really love are not always the ones that are most successful, because for the most part, light and party games are what TikTok has to thrive on by nature of short videos. But I think as gamers ourselves, we gravitate towards much heavier games.
Still, I think in general, the board game creator community is still trying to crack how to get like it's an industry question. How do we get the general audience to like get in And like personally, I'm kind of exhausted by the idea of a gateway game. I'm tired of arguing what is a gateway game. Any game could be that gateway game. Like just play a good game, I guess. So
Yeah.
like, I'm like, how do we get people
Although
to, like,
Root probably never gonna be.
no. That would be
I think it would convince someone to never ever play a game again. I would be remiss if not to say that one of our favorite games is Dream Crush.
Are you familiar?
I'm not. I've never heard that before.
Oh, buddy. Dream Crush, we played at our local board game cafe, and before the first game was over, had it in our hands to purchase. It is a game great for gays, especially great for gays who want to like trick their straight friends into being gay.
Now, I do want to, for the record, just say that we're not explicitly
Everyone's
tricking
consenting.
I don't know. Basically what you have is 3 pictures of people. They are stock images of real people doing crazy stuff in crazy outfits. And then over the course of the game, you flip over cards that reveal a little bit about the 3 leads, the crushes. And then each person decides who they have the biggest crush on. And then you go around and guess who everyone else has the crush on. You reveal it each round, and you get points based on how many people. Points, it's whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter, and the jokes are free? What is the whose line thing?
Oh my, I watched that show religiously every night.
We just watched it last night. And now
Oh my God.
Anyway, the
it's all
points
made
don't
up.
matter in Dream
Something's
Crush.
made up.
Oh yeah. The points don't matter in whatever. The points don't matter in Dream Crush, but what does matter is the fun of the stories that unfold, because the people, I mean, there's always one who sucks. There's always like a guy named Marty who's on Reddit and does Bitcoin and
yeah, so the fun thing where like gender comes into to circle back to Maggie's comment about tricking straight people is like sometimes like, right, you might be playing with your friend who identifies as a straight woman. Of the 3 leads, there's only one man on the board, and everything
sucks.
you turn over about him sucks. And so then your straight friend is having to grapple with like, okay, do I want to sign up to have the biggest crush on like the person that I would think of myself as being attracted to? Or am I ready to maybe widen my mind a little bit for the sake of this game and recognize that like in this moment, yeah, the woman is objectively hotter because she doesn't like run a Bitcoin mining farm.
It's like, it's a goofy, right? No one we've ever played with, even people who are straight, are like, I don't know if I can really
get behind.
I mean, I'm not attracted to women, so how am I going to have a crush on her? I don't get it. They're always just like, well, she's clearly the hottest, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, if I played with straight people, they'd be like, does that make me gay? And I'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like, it's fun because it puts queerness on display without putting us on display. Like our queerness isn't the key. It's like yours. Your Kinsey scale is the one on fire right
We're
now.
getting dangerous close to saying that straight people are also queer.
Complicated subject.
The A in LGBTQIA stands for asexual. We get it, but it's a good joke.
It's pretty good.
I didn't come on this podcast to talk about straight people. Come on.
So
stupid.
true.
You're right.
Dumb.
So
get them out of here.
We're not going to be invited back.
Questionable whether or not we're going to include this current comment in the final edit, but our house, we were joking yesterday, the day before, about there are some straight people we think should be included in the umbrella of queer, just because like, you're not as straight as the other straight people.
It was like nice English teachers and
himbos.
Yeah.
And,
wife guys.
Metrosexuals.
Mm-hmm.
Not because they're gay, but just because you were trailblazers in gender expression for straight people at a particular time.
Just like butch women in
At
butch
ranches,
straight women in
on
ranches. Yeah.
Like if you drive a truck and run your dead husband's ranch,
there's something
I
there.
don't
Might not
know.
be gay, but don't know you're in the Kinsey 7.
I just finished Molly Shannon's book, and which came out today, and I read it before it. But anyway, I just finished Molly Shannon's book, and in it, she comes to the conclusion that her dad is gay, and then over months is waiting for him to tell her. And she has this running joke where she says, I just couldn't believe, she doesn't say this exactly, but she's like, I just couldn't believe that my dad was gay or bi. I always say or bi because we never talked about it and I want to be respectful. And that was just like a very funny joke, because then in the most dramatic moments when her dad is like crying and telling her all about his life, she would be like, and I just can't believe I didn't realize he was gay or bi. And it's a good bit about her sad dad.
So do you have a goal or mission in making content for yourselves and for our community? Like, is it just to have a good time, or
our goal for ourselves when we started was, do you think we can get one free board game out of this? And I think our goal now is to
Can we get least 2 free board games out of this?
Yeah. Is to always at least have enough fun that we can talk ourselves out of worrying about going viral. Does that make sense? Like, yes, going viral is fun, and we're creating content and we want to get good games that we like out there in front of people. TikTok hates us. It just hates us right now. So we just want to have enough fun that like we could care less about the analytics of it all. That's our personal goal.
Yeah, I think lately we did a very last minute charity live stream this year, and it came together very quickly, and we're able to raise like $1,500 in like 2 days or something, which, you know, for us who are just like normal people who aren't connected in any sort of like charity org or anything, we're very proud of it. So and we did a charity thing last year too, and so for me at least, this is not the thing that gets me up every morning to like make TikTok videos or whatever, but it's just like knowing that like we have the ability to cultivate nice people and a good following, and like have the ability to like do the thing that we like to do that's fun in our spare time, which is, you know, make videos or take fun pictures of board games and stuff, but then to also like use that to do good also I think motivates us in a way. Is like, as long as we can keep the like positive forward momentum going, I think that's where we're at right now. It's not like we're need to hit key metrics, and it's not like, oh, we need to make XYZ connections in the industry this year. It's mostly like, can we keep like the aura around us and the presence around us online positive and fun? If we're doing that, I think we're saying we're successful.
I was gonna say, I think that a lot of it can be wrapped up into being the kind of voices that like we would want to see if we were watching TikTok. So sometimes that is being the goofy, funny people, and sometimes it's being the people who are doing a charity stream. It's not one of those things, it's both. And so whatever it is that day when we're making a video, we're wanting to say, does this feel like something that someone else could, you know, is also saying, or are we putting something unique out there that we would want to see?
We finally decided to create the channel when Megan and I were YouTubing like games for gay couples, and nothing was coming up. Plenty of 2-player games were coming up, but there was like not a single video geared toward gay people playing games. And that was just like so crazy to us, because board games are like pretty gay.
So a lot of my coworkers and friends play Magic the Gathering. And they're like, you need to make a commander deck. And it's like, I want to make a gay commander deck. And I was like, I need a list of the gayest cards in Magic the Gathering because I don't have time to read through all of them. And I found like a list, and it wasn't great. I had to do a lot of, I just had to do the legwork to figure out which MTG cards were the gayest. And there's a lot. There's a lot of
elves, pointy toes, pointy noses. Sounds gay to me.
Is that the stereotype? We all have pointy.
Just like, you know, elfish features.
What's your hope, or where do you see the industry going? Like, do you see it being more inclusive? Like, what gives you hope? What gives you less hope? I don't know. What's on your mind right now? What are the vibes?
What gives me hope is games like Block by Block. Block by Block is they call it the Urban Insurrection game. It is a cooperative game about factions in a city, neighbors, students, workers, prisoners coming together to liberate their city from being a police state. And I think what is so great about so many board games are the idea of taking narratives that have been played out and are like warped in their power balances and flipping it so that we as people and citizens in this world can like model behavior that we can then carry into our real lives. I think that is what at a baseline heady way brings me into board games. Block by Block, Spirit Island is like that. There's a game called Freedom that's like that. And I think if you are reinforcing power dynamics that exist in our real world, you are leaving so much storytelling and opportunity on the table untouched that could be brought into a game and change the world.
Whoa. I think in general, I'm excited for games that are unique in their point of view and the kind of story they're telling, because we talk a lot about games, like, the start of the game, the first few rounds feel a certain way, then you're in the mid game and they feel a certain way, then you're at the end of the game. And like there is in a way almost like a narrative arc to games, even ones that aren't like story games. So something, I guess, like Block by Block, there's like an emergent story that kind of comes about. So I think we're at a good place with board games. Like there's been so many that have been lucky to be produced in the last decade compared to before, that it kind of reminds me of like, any other medium like TV and movies and all that. It's like we now, especially as people who are hobbyists, it's like, okay, I've played like so many games. Like I kind of get what this game's going to be now. At sometimes when you're playing a game, it's like, this feels like a game I played 5 times before. Games that like feel fresh and new and say like, what if we flipped the script on this? Or like, what if we decided there wasn't a script? Don't have specifics in mind, but like when a game feels that way, I think it tastes really good. What I'm not as interested in are all the Marvel games, to be honest.
We are not Marvel fans.
I don't care about it. I just think, why don't we use this money to help somebody who
just
hasn't
create
made
your
a
new
own
IP.
Create your own stupid superheroes. Every game would be better for creating their own superheroes instead of falling back on Marvel ones. They wouldn't sell as well, but they would be better.
Yeah, I get it.
And that is coming from 3 haters.
3 true haters who do love War of the Ring, a game based on
We
IP.
love War of the Ring. But we also liked WandaVision. So take that for what it is worth.
I echo everything Maggie and Chris said, but I think that on a personal level, what is also very meaningful to me is having hobbies, to talk about stereotypes again, to have hobby spaces that don't feel like stereotypical board, like what I thought a board game space looked like, I think, before I was in the hobby.
Boy talk. Boy stuff.
So for like an example, there was a board game store in the town that I grew up in, but it was like very just cis straight white men getting together talking about D&D, which is very gay, but not how they were playing it. And so and I'm very grateful that here in New York, we have a board game store.
Shout out to Hex and Company.
Yeah, which is, I think, very not only inclusive, but I think that like the majority of the people that work there probably wouldn't identify as cis straight white men. And that makes it so we can go and have fun in those spaces. And so it's great to have board games that have representation, and that's so important. But also, as you were saying, like with Magic, it's also nice to have a space where I feel like I'm going to go and ask our friend at the board game store, what are the gayest Magic cards? And we could have a conversation about that, right? Like you can make any game queer or incorporating unique stories or having different identities to be a part of it if you're having those people at the table too. So for me, what I'm most excited about in the hobby is, yes, getting great and diverse games out there, but also making sure the spaces are diverse, because the people that are playing the game are going to have just as much of an impact on your gaming experience as the game itself.
Yeah, I'm excited for horrible internet fandom boys to die out. Their voices too, not in a literal sense.
I don't know.
What
sounds like a real crusade
against boys.
Yeah.
I guess like also like pie in the sky hope is that there's like more of a full-throated effort from industry people, including especially publishers, because I think designers are doing this, but not as much publishers, of just like drawing the line in the sand and saying like, if you believe these horrible things, which we have kind of collectively as thinking people have agreed are bad ideas for decades now, you've had time to think on this. So, if you're harassing people, if you think certain people shouldn't be allowed to play your games because you think it's only yours, etc. I just like want there to be more of, it doesn't have to be, it just feels like there's so much battling being done by a few people online to hold the fort. And I just wish it didn't have to be certain people.
Yeah.
But like, I want there to be just like, I don't know. I wish there could be a title to shift in how people kind of approach being fans online also. So that got sad at the end, but I just want people just to like know that there just isn't room for you to have these horrible backwards beliefs, really.
I also really have hope for the direction that RPGs are moving. I think RPGs fast and hard are moving in the direction of diverse stories, ideas, character sheets, all of that. I think diversity in RPGs is like not there yet, but like so on its way that it's just completely left board games behind. And so that is something that gives me hope that board games will follow quickly, hopefully. But I think just in the last like 3 or 4 years, so many really fun, really wacky RPGs have come out that just like that same progress I am not seeing in board games. Just like in the literal material. Like we just don't see board games about gay people. It's not explicit on their character sheet that they're gay. But in RPGs, partially because of the way the medium works, it's explicit in some of the text that, in Monster Hearts, it's explicit that there's a queerness. In Chris Spivey, who made Harlem Unbound with the Call of Cthulhu universe, and then made a game called Haunted West, incorporates queer identity and Black identity so much and so well. And that's just... besides the actual color of the skin of animated fake people on board games, I think there's very little being done in terms of the content of the game being diverse.
Yeah. And I think to add on to what Chris was saying, there's kind of this contention in the industry where, you do have the hate groups, you do have the marginalized folks, and then there's even this contentious group of moderate people who are like, let's just all get along and play games. Mm-hmm. And the issue with that mentality for me is that if you have space to believe that I need to be less than to join you at a table, or that I need to not talk about who I literally am as a human being because that upsets people and we can't discuss it, that is essentially the no gay bill or don't say gay bill in Florida passing. Like, to me, that's your moderate equivalent of, well, let's not talk about it because it upsets people. Whereas, it's not gatekeeping to say, no, you need to be accepting. Like that, I think needs to be a baseline of, we don't get to have different opinions here. If your opinion is that I'm less than because of how I identify, then it's not a moderate view, and you can't just tell me to be quiet because I'm upsetting people. Like I think they're trying to be like, no, I love all people. We should just stop fighting. It's like, no, I think we need to fight a little bit. Like we need to.
We're here to play War of the Ring. And if you're going to be a homophobe to me, like, I don't want to fight you. I don't even want to fight you. I just want you to go home so I can invite a better friend over. Megan messed up that soundbite, and I think it was going to be good.
I think this is all very true, and plug again for Our Family Plays Games voices. They talk a lot about this exact thing of like, where people aren't out here demanding anything else other than you not put up with horrible people. Instead of being quiet, it's just like putting up with people who are taking away people's ability to have fun is just like absolutely removing entire swaths of people from the hobby that you like. And it's like, why wouldn't you want more people to be doing this? Like,
I don't want to sit and figure out the rules to a game for an hour with people that are white supremacists or homophobic, because I don't want to sit with you for 3 hours to figure out the rules of Earth. Like, why am I going to sit here and figure out the rules of Root with you and help you and then act like I don't want to crush you?
yeah, imagine a sore loser, but also that sore loser literally thinks that you're disgusting. Like, who would want to be at that table? Nobody. So
I think maybe there's a delusion that like, oh, if we don't talk about it, there will be this like peace and cohesion that happens in the industry. And it's like, no, it's there. It's always going to be there. It's going to come out. At the end of the day, we need to have these discussions, and we need
and that's
to...
true of any subculture, right? Board gaming is not immune. We don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in this world full of shit. So just talk about it and move on.
And I think that it's also like so pointless to say things like keep politics out of board games when board games are written about wars. That literally, I mean, war generally is political, but wars that literally happened that are political. I mean, Obsession is not an apolitical game because it's about class and society, and like that has context. So I think that to speak to your point about like the moderate point of view, to just be like,
I just wanted to
be
escape
quiet.
into board games. It's my escape.
Right. You're already contending with political topics. It just
and profiting off of them.
It just didn't feel like it was about you. And so you were fine with it. And now suddenly when you have a light shown on you in your own political views and are having to grapple with that, it feels more uncomfortable.
Privilege, man. Invisible. That's why it's so spooky.
If people don't come away from this thinking that we're academics, why did we go to college? Why did we get media study degrees?
I have a bachelor's in fine arts and crafts.
Fun.
I added the crafts part, but it is fine. Yeah. So last question, if people want to follow you, get involved, you've mentioned it, but what are the official links, pages, ats? I don't know how media works, so you're going to have to explain all that to me.
We're playing games. That's with 2 G's. We are playing games across almost all socials. So TikTok, Instagram. The only one that's not like that is Twitter, where we're playing games, and that was because our handle was too many letters. So if you're
one too many letters,
if that feels confusing to you, take it up with Twitter because we agree.
I feel like if you if you looked up on Twitter, we're playing games, we would probably still come up.
Yes, yeah.
I checked. It does.
Oh,
and if you know Elon Musk,
you.
I guess we can ask him to give us a G
now,
since he's an important Twitter person now.
We also have we put out some content on Twitch. Like we talked about, we do some streams there. We'll be doing a Pride charity stream coming this June, so be on the lookout for stuff about that. But if you'd love
when this is released, it'll be probably either just happened or about to happen. So definitely look us up.
Yeah, and give us a little follow there, and then you'll get a little notification whenever we come on. So if you're like, oh, I'm gonna forget to go to their stream. If you just give us a little follow, Twitch will do all that hard work for you.
And we're also on OFPG, Our Family Plays Games Voices, which is a bi-weekly, as in every other week, not twice a week. Sorry, buys.
I wish.
Show with marginalized voices that we discussed before. And that's on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Ugh, I love all of that. There, I'm sold. Thank you so much. To wrap this hot mess of a show up, as a disclaimer, I just want to remind everyone that we are just some queer folks. We do not speak for the entire LGBTQIA+ community, nor are we trying to. The best way to be an ally is just to keep learning, listening. Remember that we're just trying to get through this all together. So that's all I have. If you're listening, know that you're loved and perfect just the way you are. And until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. We're playing games.